Furious Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today you join me in a bit of a halo car of the max power fast car generation. A car that is inevitably and relentlessly modified wherever you see them. This is the third generation Honda Civic Type R, the FN. And it's often called the worst Civic Type R, but is that a fair moniker? Is it unfair to call it that just because it's got some slightly more basic suspension than the previous generations? Or is this the absolute bargain of the hot hatch classifieds? And before we get started, if you enjoy reviews of interesting, unusual, different, modern and classic, retro and modified cars, then hit the like and of course the subscribe button down below. It'll make your day happier and cost you nothing. And do go and have a look at the furiousdriving.co.uk where you find calendars for next year, hats, mugs and all sorts of other fine gifts. Little plug out of the way, thank you. Now, okay, so this, the third generation Type R, was based on the 8th generation Civic. Now, if you saw my recent review of the Mark I Civic, you will be just staggered how far it had come in 40 short years. It's a world away, although the original Civic was incredibly well spec'd and actually really very nice to drive. It was tiny. It must have been half the size of this thing. But when Honda brought out the 8th generation Civic, the FN and the FK, depending if it's 3 or 5 door, they did something a little bit unusual because they decided that they weren't going to do the same car, like a world car all over the planet. They did different body styles in different places, which is just a bonkers thing to do in terms of economics of scale. But it did mean that this was the Europe-only body style. And it was just such a mad departure from anything else that Honda had done before. And also worth noting that it's so much more interesting and exciting to look at than the rest of the world got. A very bland anodyne offering, whereas this was actually quite exciting and interesting. Anyway, that came out in 2005, but this didn't follow until 2007, and it only ran for 4 years, 2007 to 2011. This, the FN2, was built in Swindon here in the UK for the entire rest of the world, and the FN2, because it was the Type R, did go to other places. They built 29,000 of them in Swindon. About 13,000 of those were right-hand drive for the UK. A lot went to Europe, a lot went to Australia, some went to America and Japan. But the reason they call it the worst Type R is a little unfair, but really, they dumbed down the suspension. They went from all independent suspension to a torsion beam rear, which in the eyes of a lot of Honda bros, because it's not double wishbone, it's not right, it's not good enough. It's got independent suspension at the front, McPherson struts, but that's not exciting enough and it's not complicated enough. They want a more Honda-y setup. This is quite a basic, simple, cheap to build setup, but this is where the arguments fall down, because things like the EP3 were technological tour de forces. This is very, very simplified. People don't like that. Same thing happened with the Rover SD1 after the P6, but the SD1 admittedly doesn't drive quite as nicely as the P6, but it does drive well. And this is where we step up with this. Because this car can be had for next to no money, this car will be for sale very shortly after this video goes live, and I'm not quite sure on the price, but looking at eBay, they go for between like £3,000 and £5,000 depending on condition and mileage and so forth. So they are an absolute bargain, a weapon for no money at all. And I was going to say, if you can live with the inferior suspension, you get a bargain. However, I think that's rather unfair. Because while on paper, it doesn't look as impressive, in reality, it's actually a very, very sharp car to drive. fits in so crisply, and it does lift a wheel, but that's a product of what the Honda engineers had to do to rein in that more basic rear end. What they've done is, rather than doing an Alfa Romeo style, very, very delicate balance between harsh and the smooth to give you a comfortable ride and a crisp turn-in and great body control, what they've done is gone for very, very hard suspension indeed. And you really do feel it. These seats absolutely grip you like crazy, so as you go around the corner you're not going anywhere. And they're kind of soft, they're not overly soft. That guy in the Jag in front is probably in far more comfort than me, but there's no way I'm falling out of this chair. So yeah, you can absolutely chuck the thing around, no bother at all, but it gives you no leeway over bad surfaces. You feel every bump and you feel every imperfection in the road underneath you. So that is something to be aware of. But the absolute star of the show in this car is in front of me. It's the engine, that K20. Honda really should have gone turbo with this car, but this car is kind of special because it is the last normally aspirated Type R. And it red lines at 8,000 RPM. You need to keep it in the low gears to keep you anywhere near the speed limit, because this thing is just crazy. The engine absolutely comes alive when you floor it. There aren't many cars with a red line of 8,000 RPM. This is a car you can get yourself into trouble in quite easily. So, the outside of the FN2 is just bizarre, wild, and frankly brilliant. It's so brave and out there for such a, well, engineering-led company to go so crazy on the design. Honda really do emphasise their engineering rather than their design prowess most of the time. But this is just so out there. The FN3 design is by a guy called Toshiyuki Okamoto, and he's done just a great job. The entire thing is very Dorito themed, really. There's a lot of triangles on there. Maybe he's obsessed with rotary engines or something. But from the front, we've got, well, this has been slightly enhanced with a bigger chin spoiler. We've got a big spoiler, we've got this big grille here at the front. The wraparound headlights are very, Battlestar Galactica sort of visor kind of style. This goes up into a sharply raised windscreen. These incredible door handles, which look like they're kind of floating above the door. In fact, there's solid plastic behind them, so they're actually very, very sturdy indeed. But they look like little fine floating elements, but they're nice bit of design. Heading to the back, we've got this long swage line that rises up with a sharp crease down the side of the car. The car is incredibly low as well. I'm trying to remember if this is actually factory low or been lowered by a previous owner. I've driven Honda's Heritage car recently, and that was surprisingly low as well. But getting around to the back, and this is really interesting. Again, we've got the full wraparound lights. They go all the way from wing to wing in one continuous loop. It's so out there and brilliant. And then the rear screen is actually bisected by the big spoiler mid-height, like on a Ford whale tail from the 80s. And this is actually two separate pieces of glass. So even though you've got the massive spoiler, you do have a funny sort of clear vision through the back. So yeah, often the back of the car is neglected by designers. They kind of forget what to do, but here we've got so much going on. We've got the two bits of glass, the spoiler, the wraparound thing with the Honda badge, and of course it's a red badge because it's a Type R. And the boot is actually really big because it's a practical hatchback it's based on. You've got a practical sports car, which is what everyone loves about hot hatches, isn't it? You want a car you can go to shopping with the family, you can go on a family holiday, or you can go on track day, and it does everything brilliantly. So we've got lots more of the diamond plastic oogly stuff at the bottom. We've got a very low loading lift. If you're worried about practical loading stuff and being sensible, this is as sensible as it gets. This is Honda being Honda right here. But looking through that back window is kind of weird. Now this is always my favourite part of a wintertime review because I can warm my hands up on the engine. And what an engine this is! This is a 4-banger 2-litre. It's Honda's K20Z4. Now Honda really resisted very hard at this point going turbo because, well, frankly, they should have been. You know, everyone else is going turbo for efficiency and power, but they wanted VTEC, yo! They wanted to be rev happy, down to the 8,000 RPM redline. And that's what you get from a normally aspirated engine. This is kind of harking back to the golden era of the hot hatch, the Alpha 145, the Rover Tomcat, the Golf GTI, 2-litre, normally aspirated, high revving, fun engines with bags and bags of character. And that's exactly what this delivers. It's about 200 horsepower, 198 or 201 depending who you believe, but that comes in at 7,500 RPM. Meanwhile, its torque is also quite impressive, 193 Newton meters, but that's available from 2,500 RPM. What a great motor. And do I even need to mention the fact that someone's drawn a Japanese flag underneath the bonnet? I think that's kind of the law with JDM cars, apparently. I'll probably have to do it to the MX-5 at some point. Right, let's have a look around the interior of this thing. First of all, that crazy door handle, which looks like it's floating, but is in fact a regular pull-type door handle inside there. Very interesting, clever stuff. We've got long doors. The FN3 is the 3-door version of the Mark 8 or 8th generation Civic, and this Type R is only available as a 3-door. So we've got long doors, coupe style, as it should be with a hot hatch. Everything is quite plasticky though. Got this fairly hard-wearing red, excitingly red door card insert, got a silvery plastic material, electric windows, electric mirrors, it looks like a flag at an airport, and a chunky little rollover locking mechanism, and a kind of interestingly circular, in such a diagonal car, door pull. Big door pocket, and we've got these huge door speakers which look like they come straight out of Max Power circa 2005, because this is really aiming very hard at the Max Power generation as it was back in those days. Now the interior as a whole does continue the theme of batshit crazy, interesting design. I'm going to climb inside because it's absolutely freezing. First thing to notice is that you very easily can smack your knee on this protruding lump of plastic, which I just have. Ow. That really hurts. Ow. That point went right under my kneecap where it really hurts. Okay, so let's have a look at this mad bonkers dashboard. You get a red badged key because it is a Type R. That's quite fun. I had to take the key out because it was beeping with the door open. Now you'll notice we have got here a split level dashboard. It took me a while when I first started driving it to work out where the speed was. The speed is in fact over there. It's going to keep on beeping at me now. So the screen up here has got the time, the date when it's turned off, other information when you're on the road. It's by this lovely big T-shelf area, ideal for snacking on the road, snacking on your track day. A snack day? Whatever food you got to go. Alligator sandwich and make it snappy. Over to the left, a large sloping T-shelf area, not ideal at all. Big T-shelf fail, along with the fact you can also impale your passengers as they climb in and out. Again, big fail. I thought that kind of thing went out with 1950s American cars. Anywho, we've got a lot of interesting stuff going on. It's going to keep on beeping madly at me right now. So we've got a little screen in the centre which is telling me to check engine. You don't need to check engine. That is lifted forward of the rev counter. So the rev counter redlines 8,000 RPM and a 9,000 is where you're going to blow the engine up. But that's just really cool. That's front and centre, like on a Porsche. Then you've got your other sub gauges around that and behind it, and of course your speedometer up there in your eye line, as long as you move your steering wheel down far enough. To the left you've got controls for heated mirrors, your air ventilation is all down here surrounding you. Your radio and your other ventilation is just there, little cubby just there. Interestingly, right by the steering wheel, in finger's reach, we've got the vehicle stability control to turn off and on right there. And also, curiously, got a totally different air vent on the driver's side. Got an eyeball vent on the driver's side, and we've got an integrated swoopy triangle-y thing on the left. very odd. And quite annoyingly, I'm going to say this is actually an annoying thing, we've got a push button starter and a key. So to start the car, you have to push the key into the lock, turn it 2 notches, and then move your hand and push the button. That is incredibly irritating. I don't know why they did that. I can understand the want for a start button because, you know, that's cool and exciting in 2005 and, yo, look at us, we've got a start button, yada yada. But why do it with, the technology wasn't there to make it happen. It just was rubbish. Okay, moving back, we've got the steering wheel, which is very Honda-y and very, you know, looks like Roland Rat with a big red nose. Roland the rat-nosed reindeer or something. Lots of controls for radio, cruise control. Also, it's perforated leather with red stitching, very fine perforation, so you've got lots of grip on it. Got the horn for the horn test. Oh, that is a Japanese car built in Britain that's pretending to be Japanese but pretending to be British at the same time and wanting to be the ruler of the max power generation parp. Moving back into the centre, we've got this interestingly textured, I'm not sure what it's trying to be, plastic around the driver's side and then more of a traditional textured plastic over the rest of the dashboard. Coming underneath that, we've got a flip-up storage area, big enough to put some hi-fi or tuning type equipment, so your boost control, that kind of stuff could happily fit in there. I've seen many cars with that on. Underneath that is quite interesting, our Type R numbered plaque, so we know this is car 19,073. That's where it falls over, because if it's car 9 of 74 or something, that sounds quite special. When you're car 19,073, that's starting to lose a little bit of its exclusivity. Not to worry. That is though next to a leather gated metal balled gear shift, 6-speed manual, snickety snackety. This does feel a little bit more notchy than I think it should do, but it is just there. It is a lovely 6-speed manual. This is where the rear window switches would be in a 4-door, and of course our lighter socket, 12 volts, and a good sized cubby hole, combined with another even bigger cubby, so loads of space, just no cup holders. I'm going to jump out quickly and show you these seats, because they are super wraparoundy, sporty, buckety seats. Check out these things. They are so massively wraparound and supportive sports seats. They just absolutely hug you into the chair. We've got that hard-wearing red fabric in the middle, Alcantara on the sides and up top, as well as the Type R embroidery. We've got this hole so you can put a race harness through, so if you are going proper full-on track daying, you can be fully prepared for that with the factory seats. Interestingly, in the back, okay, not so interesting, it has got seats that are in the same style. That's not exciting. But it's got cup holders in the back. Nothing in the front, but cup holders in the back. Thanks, guys. But then underneath that, you'll notice there's an absolute cavern of space. Not only does this make this very useful for doing, you know, shopping trips and Christmas holidays and so forth, because you can hide tons of things under the chairs. That means these rear seats will fold completely forward and give you a massive, massive load space. How cool is that? What makes this car so very, very drivable is the cam profile. It's not just got the VTEC yo, the way they've kind of profiled the change is much more gradual than previously, so that it easily kind of rolls, gently rolls from the smoothness at low speed, so you can just cruise around and just be pootling with no major effort, and it's comfortable and it's quiet, apart from the road noise from the huge tyres. Then as you get into the higher rev ranges, it gains that more power, it gets that more oomph to it. So it's a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde split personality, which makes the thing very, very good indeed. Now there are a few minor issues with the car that make it, well, less easy to live with perhaps. And you'll notice on a day as cold as today, it hasn't got heated seats. It hasn't got cup holders, only in the back. That thing, this big point on the corner of the dashboard is going to take your knee off at some point, and it really hurts. I keep losing the seatbelt down the back of the chair, and because it's so easy to go quickly, it's a car you have to check yourself quite frequently to remind yourself, the speed limit is this, because the car wants to go quickly, and it does it very easily indeed. And although it can turn in very quickly and very hard and grip like absolute, you know, the proverbial poop to a blanket, they've made that happen by using very, very hard spring rates, and so it's not the most comfortable thing to be in. On a road like this, I'm being jarred and jiggered all over the place. Well, put it this way, if I'd left a can of drink on the tea shelf, by the time I got to my destination, it would be ready to explode. I can drive something like my 145 Cloverleaf, which turns in pretty much as well as this, and it's not going to jiggle around quite so heftily. Now, because of the nature of this car, it's a very, very fast car. It's from the Type R lineage, and because it's now relatively inexpensive, the destiny of most of these things is to be modified. Often not that well, but sometimes quite creatively. There is an awful lot you can do to these engines to get 400 or 500 horsepower out of them without really trying too hard. A supercharger kit, okay, it's not the most inexpensive upgrade, that'll push you north of 400 horsepower without changing anything internally on the motor. It's a very strong engine. The thing that kills most of these cars, apart from being crashed, is rust. They're wafer thin steel, and it does corrode like crazy. I saw one the other day that had sills that had gone front to back, and it was a 2010 car. The split level dashboard does take a little bit of getting used to. You have to remember that you're looking at your rev counter down here like on a 911, and your speed is over there. And with sunglasses on, it's actually quite hard to see the speed. I just smashed my other leg into the corner of the dashboard after I was moving the GoPros around, and I had been going to say that I really admired the bold and brave styling of this thing, but now I'm just going to say it's irritating me and I don't like it anymore. It's hurting me too frequently. Now the 0 to 60 of this thing with its 2 litre normally aspirated motor is 6.6 seconds, and it will fly up to 146 miles an hour. So it's not exactly a slouch, even in standard form, before you start throwing air filters, exhaust, tuning kits, and anything else you want to chuck at it. It's got a lot of potential. And in standard form, it'll still return 31 mpg, which is, well, for a car giving that kind of performance, not bad, although for a 2 litre hatchback, not that great. But you are getting quite a bit in return. The gear change is very short and very snappy indeed, but I climbed in this morning and it's about 3 degrees or so, and this metal gear knob was actually quite unpleasant to touch. It's the same problem I had in the MX-5 when I first got that. That had to go because I could not live with a metal gear knob on a very hot or very cold day, because it's not nice to touch. You need driving gloves for it. This particular car does feel a little bit notchy on the change, but it has got like 120,000 miles on it. Right, let's give you a quick acceleration demonstration. It really doesn't take long for the car to start heading north of the speed limit, so you've got to be quite careful with this thing. I do quite like how they've rather sarbily put all the controls really close to where you're going to be. Your hand just rolls off the steering wheel onto the ventilation, onto the radio, onto your other immediately needed controls. It's really well thought out, but I don't like smacking my knee onto that thing the whole damn time. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this ride out in this absolutely incredible hot hatch bargain. I think it's a little bit unfairly maligned as being the worst Type R, because honestly, it's really not that bad at all. However, it does have a few compromises that do mean that although you could live with it day to day, but you would probably wind up getting a bit frustrated. However, if your life involves fantastic back roads and the odd track day, this is an engine you should definitely be trying before they all disappear. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please, as always, hit like and subscribe, and join us again next time driving something completely different.